Good evening, everyone. And this is the revival of something that we had started at Urban Lab. Pre-COVID, but a little bit before that also. So we used to have a series called the Urban Lab Think Tank, where we invite people, and not necessarily people who work in the same areas that we do, but something that could be of interest to everyone. Maybe it touches our lives in some way. Maybe it's cultural in nature, or maybe it is something that is just interesting for everyone. And we have in the past have people who draw cartoons come and talk about their work. We have had people from within the urban lab talk about public spaces in streets. So we have had a variety of people come and go, and then at some point I think we got busy doing consulting work, and then this did not continue for long, right? And now we have recently started the Urban Lab Foundation, which actually focuses on these kind of informal meetings. It focuses on knowledge dissemination, advocacy, capacity building. And so I think it's a very good opportunity for us to be back together in such a setting. We don't want it to be formal. This is supposed to be interactive, and I have the pleasure of welcoming Mercy. Mercy has been a colleague at SET University with both me and Shelly. And just about, I think, 10 days back in the office, we were discussing about solid waste and why did Indore succeed and why have others not succeeded. And through that conversation, we thought, why not have somebody come here who knows about Indore and its story. And Shelly said, Mercy knows about it. Mercy's written a book about it. And I thought it's great that we can then talk about the Indore story, right? And so today is about Indore story. And Mercy will take us through what happened in Indore. Feel free to interrupt her. I'm taking the liberty of saying that. Interrupt her wherever you want to, ask questions, and let this be interactive. And this is just the first one of our new think tank series, and hopefully we'll do many more in the future. So welcome Mercy, and I'll let Mercy introduce herself, what she does. Over to you, Mercy.
Thank you, Abhijit and Shelly, for inviting me to share about some of my work that I did at SET University and out of my interest of working in the area of solid waste management. Basically, I am a management professional with intention to dive deep in the urban realm, and so I became an urban management researcher that way. And while one day we were sitting in the university and we were talking about the newly released Swachh Survekshan results sometime around 2017. So it was like Indore is topping Swachh Survekshan. So thought कि करते क्या होंगे ये लोग ऐसा, हमारे शहर तो इतने साफ नहीं है, तो ऐसा these kinds of rankings keep coming on, and we should say probably go and visit and I see that does it really holds true or not. So me and my colleague, we went to the city to see how it is, and we were like quite surprised when we visited. Then we went to the municipal corporation. We also spoke to the officials, and they took us around the different places in the city and the kind of work that these people are doing. And then in the evening they brought us back to our hotel. And then we thought they are taking us to the known places. So we should be going and exploring the city by ourselves and finding out whether the internal parts of the city is also clean or not, and whether it gels with the overall results or not. So we went into the interiors of the city. We went into the old market where there was too much of crowd and too much of shops, and just like our old cities here in Ahmedabad. So to our surprise, the corporation was working there at that point of time. So it was around 8:30, 9 o'clock, and we could see sweepers sweeping. We could see the vehicles coming and collecting, because that market revives itself during night time. So night time, the entire fabric of that market changes, and it becomes more like an eatery lane. So there is a different kind of waste that is generated at that point of time, and a different kind of footfall which comes over there. And most of the people are on the street rather than being inside the shops. So it was really interesting to see that the city government is actually working. It is working round the clock. After that, we came back and we thought to write down a case study about it, and then it kept on pulling. We didn't got the time to write, and then eventually we saw that year by year the rankings are coming, and year by year they are retaining their position. So we thought that let us go again and see what they are doing so different. So that time we could see one thing, that there was too much of sustainability in their operations. Not sustainability as environment, but sustainability in their operations. Because what they started some 2 years back when we visited, and they were actually upgrading and improving their efficiency day by day. And to the extent that they have really converted quite of the waste into a business model. So, in management terms, we use something called process chain. So, previously when we visited, it was a process chain, right? So they could streamline their processes and their operations, and that is how they could achieve something like a cleaner city. But the next time when I went there, I saw that it has been converted into a value chain. It's no more a process chain, but in each of the component of the process, they are trying to generate a value, and they could ultimately create a business model out of waste, which is actually managing waste is one of the most costliest work of the municipal corporation. So if you will look at the budgets, it is very difficult to analyze the budget in terms of how much of solid waste budgetary allocation had happened. But it will take some time to analyze that. But if you are making sense out of those bits and pieces of the budgetary document, so you can understand that much of the cost goes into managing solid waste. So, so the budget becomes very skewed in terms of service delivery. So what happens is that this was a city which could leverage maximum out of the missions that the government of India had launched. So they kept solid waste management in the center, and they took a lot of resource allocation from the smart city mission. They took a lot of resource allocation from the Swachh mission. They put in their own money as well, but they realized it quite early that when the mission push is going to get over, they might not be able to sustain such a costly affair. So that is where the value component of the entire process chain comes up, and they tried to evolve business models out of waste. To the extent that now much of the cost is sustained by their own business model. So much of the cost is getting recovered by the business models that they are able to generate out of the waste. So one of the success stories for them, the reasons for this success story is that how well could they gain that trust of the people. Because for waste management, the first and foremost thing is segregation of waste. So if you have a very high quality of segregation, so here we just say wet and dry, but there is a 5 level of segregation that is happening in Indore. So if you are able to get segregated waste from source, then lot of business models can be arrived out of each source. So when I first visited, they were segregating it only in 2 parts, that is dry and wet waste. Now that is the most complex and difficult part in the entire solid waste management exercise. That is getting segregated waste from source. Now, India being such a diverse country, we have people of different cultures, different beliefs, faiths, and each culture has an implication towards waste, right? So, what kind of waste is generated and how do they deal with that waste? So this is a very classic example of a shared language and a shared vision which was created between the political wing and the executive wing. Because if we want to bring this kind of massive change in a city which is so diverse in terms of demographics, in terms of the income level, in terms of the religious beliefs and cultures, it is very important that the political wing comes together, because otherwise there will be a lot of retaliation from the communities, and the executive wing would be helpless. Even if they have all the will, passion and desire and the resources in place, everything will fall flat on the face. So this was a shared language that both the political and the executive wing they started communicating to the people. And uh, disciplining public behavior or influencing public behavior is a massive task. And it is a very sensitive thing also, because if you are asking people to do certain things, and that means as a city government you have a much more responsibility to ensure that it is reinforced in the same sense in which you are asking public to behave in a certain manner. So if that reinforcement doesn't happens in the same sense, then people say, अरे ये तो ऐसे ही रोज कुछ कुछ लेके आते हैं और हमको कुछ कुछ करने को कहते हैं, पर इनकी तरफ से तो कुछ होता नहीं है, तो फिर हम क्यों हमारी तरफ से इतनी मेहनत करें? So whenever there is a drive or an enforcement, at that time something happens, and then everything falls back to the square one, the normal behavior and normal routine is followed. So here, when we expect a behavior change from the people, there is much more requirement of behavioral discipline in the entity which is trying to enforce them, right? So if you are asking people to segregate waste, then you should also be collecting segregated waste. So when people will see that, they will have कि चलो हम जो इतना मेहनत कर रहे हैं हमारे घर में, वो सही जगह से सही तरीके से जा रहा है, ठीक है? अब आप हमको कहो कि हम segregated waste दें और आप उसको सब एक साथ ही करके ले जाओ, तो it is not that people don't see and they don't talk. Everybody sees. They might not talk, very clearly and blatantly, but they all understand, and then slowly and slowly the undercurrents are there and people don't follow what you are wanting them to do. So here, the corporation realized this. Why? Because at each step that the city government started with in solid waste management, they always started with a pilot testing. So they always did a pilot of what they wanted. So the first pilot was in 1 or 2 wards. They started looking at how many households are there, how many lanes are there, what is the demand for waste to be collected, right? And how they would allocate the resources like the tipper vans and all. And then they started understanding that if there is no hand holding and if there is just communication with the people कि ये करो ये करो ये करो, तो नहीं होगा. So that kind of hand holding is required. Just like we hand hold a child and make the child do cursive writing or other forms of writing in the school, ऐसे citizens का hand holding करना पड़ता है. The form is different. You really need not get into their house and segregate waste for themselves, right? So what they did is that they evolved a concept called social volunteers. So they got a group of social volunteers and they started deploying social. So they were also having that same shared language as the city government was having, right? And they started deploying these social volunteers with each of the tipper vans, right? So the tipper van has one driver, one helper, and the social volunteer. Now the social volunteer used to walk through the whole lane, not sit in the van, right? And each household, this social volunteer used to say कि सर आपको segregated waste देना है, कल हम आएंगे, कल आप सूखा अलग देना और गीला अलग देना और हमको ये ऐसे लेके जाना है. First day it got over, second day few of them gave, third day they complained कि हमको आता नहीं है किस कैसे क्या. So they put down the entire waste on the road and they showed them how it is segregated, right? And then the segregation happened. So each day, and even today, this thing started in 2016 and even today the social volunteers are there. And these social volunteers have become the eyes and ears of the corporation. So they just not only manage the citizen perspective from the waste management, but many other things also. They inform the corporation, so they are like a bridge between the city government and the people, right? So these volunteers, they exactly developed a kind of a rapport with each household in their entire beat, right? And they understood that there are certain hard nuts also which cannot be cracked and which are very difficult. So slowly these kinds of information started coming to the city government, and that was the time when they started an enforcement mechanism. So they didn't started with the enforcement mechanism initially, they started with the hand-holding mechanism. So with hand-holding, lot of things got sorted. Now only a small component was left which could be done with the enforcement. So they designed kind, just like we have ambulances and police vans and all. So for enforcement, they tried to give an identity to enforcement. So they said that we will have a yellow jeep. So this yellow jeep is something which is visible as corporation entities which are going around and inspecting. तो जो सिटीजन्स हैं वो भी थोड़ा सा कॉशियस हो जाते हैं इसको देख के कि भाई ये हमारे पे फाइन लगाएगा, और जो एम्प्लॉयज हैं ऑन फील्ड दे आल्सो बिकम कॉशियस दैट somebody is observing us. And before getting into this mode of enforcement, they passed these kinds of penalty mechanisms and all as bylaws in the municipal council. And then they started demonstrating enforcement. So there were commercial complex bulk waste generators who were fined to the tune of lakhs of rupees for not following the solid waste. And the most important strategy that they used was that whenever there was a hefty fine that has to be charged, they used to take the media also with them. Right? So when the media used to go with them, the media understood the things in a better perspective. And the other thing was that they wanted to publicize that this is not something which is just mere talk. This is something in action. और जितने भी हाई टिकट साइज एनफोर्समेंट पेनल्टीज होती थी वो सब बहुत अच्छे से पब्लिसाइज होती थी ताकि, एंड बिकॉज द पॉलिटिकल विंग वाज आल्सो विद देम, सो व्हाट हैपेंड इज दैट पीपल कुडंट गो एंड मेक अ रिप्रेजेंटेशन कि देखो ये लोग आ गए हैं और ये फालतू में हमको परेशान कर रहे हैं, बिकॉज दे ऑल शेयर द सेम लैंग्वेज. सो द पब्लिक वाज सॉर्ट ऑफ modeled or primed to actually follow these kinds of change mechanisms that the city government wanted them to do. But the interesting part was that when they, so at every step other than piloting, they also did a lot of hand-holding for not only the people, general public, but also the bulk waste generators. So they said, and this is one of the things which I feel that even the central government or the state government, when they come out with policy frameworks or policy design, they seldom think of the hand-holding at the implementation level. They also design the implementation framework, that how the implementation should happen, how the assessment of the implementation should happen, how the funds will get allocated. At times they design the tight grants also and all of that. But the hand-holding mechanism is absolutely missing. Now there is something very radical which is coming out for which you don't have an experience, so you always want to understand कि मैं इसको कैसे करूँ. So if that kind of a hand-holding is provided, it will take us a very long way in achieving the outcomes of any of the missions, programs or schemes or policies that are designed for bringing around a bigger change. So here what happened, when they told the bulk waste generators कि पहले तो आपको segregate करना है, उसके बाद they said कि आप हमको जितना कम waste दो उतना अच्छा है. So you start treating your wet waste by yourself. Now when they, क्योंकि तब तक the business model was not cracked. So to make the system more efficient, the city government thought कि less the waste comes, less the management of it. So if it gets managed at source, the way it is segregated at source, it's better. So they told all the bulk waste generators कि बस आप लोगों को इसको खुद को treat करना है, आपके wet waste को आप ही treat करो. Now hotels and all, they have big amount of wet waste generated, right? अब ऐसा कोई बोल दे तो फिर हम करेंगे क्या इस waste का? हमें तो नहीं पता है, क्योंकि we are not in the business of managing waste, we are in the business of hospitality, so we don't know how to deal with it. So what they did is that before announcing this to the bulk waste generators, they identified some of the mechanisms by which bulk waste generators can treat their wet waste at their own premises or wherever they want. And they talked to few startups which were coming up in this field, and they gave a complete list of these kinds of entities to the bulk waste generators कि आप या तो आप इनसे खुद मिल लीजिए, और अगर आप चाहते हैं तो हम एक कॉमन जॉइंट मीटिंग करवाते हैं जिससे कि यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड फ्रॉम ईच अदर दैट हाउ दिस हैपेंस एंड देन व्हाट इज द बेस्ट वन फॉर यू, which technology you should use, which partner you should use, what is the cost, what is the benefit, and all of these things. So because this hand-holding of making two different entities meet together towards a common goal of wet waste management, the bulk waste generators found it easier. So there was no retaliation, or people didn't found escape mechanisms, or didn't went to the court for PILs and all. But it was a very smooth process for them, because at least they know 10 people who can help them out do this, right? And these 10 people were also, most of them were startups. So they were also so enthusiastic and passionate that they also wanted to get into this, because that was what their vision of startup was. So that's how many of the bulk waste generators started orienting themselves around wet waste management, where they converted all of the kitchen waste into gas, and they started channelizing it back into their kitchen to again cook food for the hotels. So initially they did it for their own staff, so their own staff members dining there. For them the kitchen was separate, so they experimented this, because bigger hotels, they have a lot of responsibility for their guests, so they just can't experiment with all these things. So that's what everything went in a small pilot. And then when it was successful, they took it to the next step. So that is the kind of hand-holding that they did. And slowly they also started understanding, looking at the efficiencies. Now one very good example of efficiency is that we see these tipper vans, है ना, कितनी गंदी होती है, ठीक है? We don't feel like, if we are on a two-wheeler, we don't feel like इसके बाजू में से मैं ज़्यादा देर चला तो feel के हम निकल जाते हैं. So they and one of the important things is that all this was not outsourced or contracted or on PPP. Everything was done by the corporation itself, right? So I understood that when it is the staff members themselves who do it, one is that all our city government employees, they are very well versed with their city and the operations of the city. They are not forthcoming most of the times because of the inbuilt structural inefficiencies. The human resource inefficiencies are there, but they are very well versed with the problems of their city, which area has what issues, and also how to solve them. So when the corporation started with this, they started with the sweepers. So the sweepers were never on the field previously. So they understood that along with the people, it is the Safai Karmcharis also whom we need to motivate and bring them over to the field. So there was a big union which was existing there. So they wanted to break the union. Now again, breaking the union by way of dialogue is very difficult, right? Because nobody would like to break away from that setup, because there is an unset organizational dynamics which is there in the unions. So what they did is that they followed a carrot and stick approach. So they said that all the Karmcharis would be on the field, the attendants would be on the field. So they need not come to the corporation and give them attendance. There would be a biometric attendance. It would be on the field, and there would be darogas who would be managing the sweepers on a given beat of the stretch of land which each sweeper is entitled to do work is called a beat. So the daroga used to monitor a few of the Safai Karmcharis, and they have to do a biometric attendance 4 times a day. And their payment was linked to the attendance, and the payment was made through bank accounts. So previously ऐसा सब नहीं होता था. So payment amount X होता था, पर उनको X से कम ही मिलता था. So now it was channelized through the bank, so actually they could get the full amount. And because it was linked to the biometric, they could get for the number of days they are available on the field. But the carrot was that the corporation went around talking to many good multi-speciality private hospitals. And they asked them that as part of your CSR activity, we would want you to give health cards to our Safai Karmcharis. Now, because these are Safai Karmcharis and they are on the field dealing with waste, their chances of combating any infection is quite high. And because of that, they will themselves get ill and their family members will also be sick because of that. So, one of the important things was health, right? So, they drew out a chain of hospitals which were giving very subsidized and in many of the cases free of charge treatment to these employees and their family members also. So this was a big thing for them. क्योंकि भाई अगर हम बीमार हो जाएं इंडिया में तो हमारी तो जेब पूरी हल्की हो जाती है. तो ये उन लोगों के लिए बहुत अच्छा हो गया कि यार, और उनको ऐसा लगने लगा कि the corporation is taking care of us. It is understanding that we also are getting involved in some kind of an hazardous work. This is hazardous work, and so they are trying to help us out. Then they also designed incentive mechanisms. They also designed non-monetary mechanisms of rewarding and appreciating and recognizing the work of individuals and all. So slowly and slowly the presence of the Karmcharis on the field also started increasing. And similarly they had their own workshop. Coming back to the vehicle thing, they had their own workshop, and when we went and saw, we realized that the vehicles are getting cleaned. ये जितनी भी vehicles कचरा लेने आती हैं वो भी साफ होती हैं, right? So every alternate day the vehicle was getting cleaned in the workshops, and they also told us that because these vehicles they carry a lot of waste, and there is a lot of decomposition of the waste which happens in the vehicle itself, and a lot of leachate also which starts occurring. So the life of the vehicle gets shortened. So that is also a cost because you have to replace the vehicle. So अगर अपने यहाँ पे गाड़ियाँ 10 साल चलती है तो वो गाड़ी का लाइफ 3 साल ही होता है. So 3 to 5 years the vehicle will have to be changed. Now if you don't change the vehicle, then what will happen? It will add to the cost. ठीक है? So पहले तो वो vehicle को इसलिए clean करते हैं कि वो लीचेट से corrosion नहीं है. कि corrosion होगा तो vehicle उतना जल्दी खराब होगा, right? Then they also did some change with the design of the vehicle. So they understood that अभी आपने देखा होगा अहमदाबाद में बहुत सारी टिपर वैन्स के बहुत edges होते हैं, ठीक है? Now in the edges what happens is that the waste gets deposited in the edge, right? And then the rusting starts happen there. So they started experimenting with a design which was curved. So wherever there were edges, they are all curved ones. So it becomes easier even when you wash. It becomes easier for the deposits to come out and get away, and the vehicle becomes cleaner with the washing also. So super clean vehicles. मतलब ऐसा खराब नहीं लगेगा अपने पास से निकल गया तो very neat and clean vehicles. And they also, and the older vehicles they started keeping them for replacement. So if there is a breakdown of a vehicle on the street, then the information will come and these old vehicles will go and start replacing them for a while. So they started looking at cost minimization this way. So how do we elongate the life of the vehicle and how do we minimize the cost of replacement? But anyhow, they understood that the vehicles need to be replaced off and on, and that is why also it is one of the most cost-bearing exercise. Unlike a sewage pipeline or unlike a water pipeline, when you lay down it's for 25, 30, 40 years. But here, these vehicles need to be replaced every now and then. And if you have a third-party contractor doing it, the contractor will again charge it from you because they also need to replace the vehicle. Otherwise, the cost of door-to-door connection will increase. So with experience, they started understanding these things and they started building in the efficiencies. Then they developed. So Mahindra and Mahindra approached them with Tech Mahindra approached them with a small plant where they wanted to convert waste to gas. So they said, "Chalo, theek hai, try karte hain." So very smartly, they deployed this waste to gas plant in front of the Choitra Mandi. So, Choitra Mandi is the biggest, जैसा अपना जमालपुर का मंडी है, so it is the biggest vegetable market there. So the cost of logistics is very less because this is the gate and then after the road it is the plant. तो यहाँ से waste collect करके you have to just take it to the across the road and deposit it there. So it was logistically very smartly designed so that the cost of logistics is minimized. And then they started experimenting with the plant and they started generating waste to gas. This gas, they had a pumping station there only, and this gas they supplied to the BRTs at 5 rupees less the CNG that was available in the market. So that was again a win-win for the city government because the cost. So Mahindra and Mahindra was supplying that to them, so they supplied them at 5 rupees less because the land was provided to them by the corporation. So that was the arrangement that they had. Now this waste to energy plant, the pilot was a big success. So they realized if this pilot can be scaled up, right? So previously what was happening that all the wet waste was getting converted into compost, and initially the compost started selling at a good price and the quantity also, but slowly and slowly it was coming down, right? So they thought कि अब करेंगे क्या, मतलब फिर compost selling के business में भी हमको जाना पड़ेगा, right? So they thought that let us look at this waste to gas operations in a scaled up manner, and they started inviting tenders from companies, and then recently when I went they had operationalized this whole setup of the entire city's wet waste getting converted into gas, and they get a premium of around 2 crores from the agency. So upfront they provide 2 crores of rupees to the corporation. The land is the corporation's land. The waste, they have a promise to give a high quality segregated waste because that depends on the calorific value of the gas. And the entity has to provide gas to all the BRTS vehicles at 5 rupees less than the market value, and remaining of the gas they can sell out. So they make big gas cylinders, fill these gas cylinders, and they sell it out to numerous industries. And a portion of it they give it to the BRTS as a form of pumping. So the wet waste came out to be a business model for them. तो अब उनको चाहिए कि सब हमको वेस्ट दे दो, ठीक है? पहले वो थे कि तुम्हारा तुम कर लो. वो हाउस होल्ड्स को भी बोलते थे कि तुम अपना वेट वेस्ट, अपना किचन वेस्ट खुद ही कंपोस्ट करो, और है ना वो 3-pot system composting और zero waste ward and all they started doing. But now they want all the waste should come to them. So isn't it a very smart move, right? So they are getting money out of this waste which they were previously shunning off कि भाई सब अपना अपना manage करो. I mean, now it is a very good opportunity for them. So other than the 2 crore rupees, the subsidized fuel that the CNG is getting for the BRTS is getting is again a premium for the corporation. So similarly, they did for the dry waste also. So in the dry waste, again the promise is that we will provide you with high quality dry waste. So only dry waste. We will not get into further much segregation of dry waste. But if it happens, it's well and good. But the promise is of giving dry waste. Now, one of the facility that has come up is state of the art facility. You should all go and visit that. So it uses magnetic conveyors and AI based segregation of dry waste and a lot of.
Is that running successfully?
Yes, very successfully.
Because
And
at many places we find them, but they stop running.
no, it is running very successfully. And out of one dry waste which is coming out, they have 16 streams of waste. So that dry waste is segregated into 16 waste streams. So that means they have 16 business models. That entity has 16 business models. And it pays something like 1.5 crores to the corporation upfront every year. So that is the deal between both of them. So they have to continuously provide. So where does the key lies? The key lies in segregation. And who segregates? All of us we segregate. So it is the people and it is the social volunteers, and that is why social volunteers, even though it is one of the cost bearing exercises, they have still retained it. Because इनका सारा business model वो social volunteers के ऊपर बैठा हुआ है, right? So this way they converted, and eventually with lot of gas being captured and used for commercial purposes, they understood that they are capturing a lot of offsetting a lot of methane from the environment, and they applied for carbon credits. They started with a portfolio of around 50,000 or so, and now they have a portfolio of around 8 crores. Now they have started becoming aggregators to other cities. So they have understood the technique of generating carbon credits, registering them and trading them. So they have told different other cities कि आप जो छोटे-छोटे projects कर रहे हो जिसमें carbon offset होता है, why not come with us, share those details with us, and we will create a corpus of carbon credits. We will trade it, and whatever revenue we are getting, we will share it pro rata. So आपके project से जितना generate हुआ उतना. So other cities, if they go solo, it is a very costly exercise for them, and it is very cumbersome and complex as well. I mean, now they are already doing it, so they know how to navigate through it. So might as well they go to different entities and.
Which department will be doing this?
This was the smart city vertical
Okay.
of the municipal government. So like the purchase of the vehicles was through the smart city mission. The installation of the GPS mechanism was through the smart city mission. They themselves they have two kinds of command control centers. One is the ICCC under the smart city mission, and one they started way before ICCCs were conceptualized. So that is very much dedicated for waste only. So that is a waste command control center. So this is how the whole story of sustainability started. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, going back to the waste segregation where the wet waste was converted to methane. So who took up the onus of getting the waste to the
third party.
to the third party.
So that was corporation. So corporation said that we will collect the waste and we will bring the waste to the doorsteps, and it would be high quality wet waste. So till now that operations is in-house maintained by the corporation only. But now what happens is that now they are so much efficient in that system that now if they give it, outsource it to a third party, they exactly know how the system will work. So
they can monitor well also.
yes. So
Where
if you yourself don't know how the system works, and if you hand it over to the third person, then it is very difficult to understand the tricks and techniques of bypassing and escaping accountability and all. But if you are very much thorough with how the system works, then if you go and outsource it, you have lot more efficiencies coming in.
इसको अगर थोड़ा और मैं clear करूँ, तो इसमें we are doing a freight management plan for Bangalore, and one of the issues that we face over there is that the the farmers or the traders, whoever come to sell their commodities at the APMC, they do not even want to pick up the leftovers to put it into the dustbin. So that is a bigger issue that the government faces in terms of allocating resources to get the place cleaned up and everything. So it is just that obviously it comes to behavioral change at some point, but what we heard is that there were a lot of conversations that happened. So I just wanted to know whether things are different in Indore, and if so, how?
So I will give you an example. So second time when I went, so we were moving around the city in an auto rickshaw. Okay? So this इंदौर पहला नंबर लेके आया है, 3 बार ले आया है. ये एक है ना बहुत प्राइड की तरह लोगों के अंदर आई है. ठीक है, तो पहले तो we used to think कि यहाँ पे ऐसे बोल रहे हैं. But while sitting in that auto, ट्रैफिक सिग्नल पे वो रुका. So एक बाइक वाला आया हमारे बाजू में और he spitted on the road. Now this auto वाला he shut down his auto, got down and he told him कि ये क्या किया तूने, right? ये ऐसा नहीं चलेगा, अपने को अपना शहर अपने को क्लीन रखने का, अपने को साफ रखने का ये अपनी जिम्मेदारी है. And then there was a big argument between both of them. And then finally he said sorry, अब मैं नहीं करूँगा, मैं ध्यान रखूँगा, right? And then he came and said, and he was very angry. He was like, I could see that people have started owning up the city. And the kind of civic sense which was missing previously, which is missing in most of us, people have started owning it up. And so this is called participatory monitoring. तो रोको टोको, उन लोगों ने स्लोगन भी चलाया है ना, रोको टोको. तो वो आपस में एक दूसरे को मॉनिटर करते हैं, रोकते हैं, टोकते हैं. Right? So that is how their system is working in Indore. And it is a kind of a shame there if you litter and if you create lot of waste outside your house or something. So people look at you very differently then. So that is the spirit that they were able to imbibe in the people.
ये tipping point क्या था?
Tipping point as
For the people, for the
What's this
change of
behavior change?
behavior.
because they could see that the corporation is putting in so much of efforts and our efforts are getting channelized in the right direction and we are getting recognition from the whole of the country. So that was a matter of pride for them.
So all of this has added to the positive side,
Yeah.
that vicious cycle they could break.
Yes. Why this story is interesting, many cities are doing many good things in waste management. But the thing is that it's a piecemeal approach. कोई किस में अच्छा कर रहा है, कोई किसी में अच्छा कर रहा है. But they were able to crack through the whole chain and go beyond that. So that is how they beautifully managed the entire system.
Are there questions from people online?
Nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, you can ask them.
You
I
can
mean,
ask
if,
them
if
you have.
anybody online has any questions, please feel free.
Yeah, you can type in your questions.
Type or you can even ask directly.
Yeah.
Feel free.
So was there any penalty which was charged to the individual households if
Yeah.
they did not?
Yeah.
तो मेरे
what
डाउट है
was
यहाँ पे एक्चुअली जनरली अहमदाबाद में मैंने इनिशियली देखा था कि पहले म्यूनसिपालिटी बोलता है यू हैव टू गिव टू वेस्ट डिफरेंटली ओके, पर उसके बाद जो एक्चुअली इन स्पेसिफिकली आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट द अपार्टमेंट्स एंड दिस क्या होता है अपार्टमेंट्स में जो लोग कलेक्ट करते हैं वो लोग पहले इनिशियली कलेक्ट करना चालू किया, देन उसके बाद दे हैव क्लब्ड इट. तो ये सिचुएशन इंदौर में कैसे हैंडल किया गया?
वो लोग उस पूरे अपार्टमेंट को पेनल्टी देने लग गए. सो व्हेन दिस सोशल वॉलंटियर वाज देयर, he was continuously monitoring the kind of waste that is coming from the apartment. So अगर उसने देखा कि मिक्स्ड वेस्ट है तो पहले तो वो लोग आपको वहीं पे ही पूरा वेस्ट खाली करवाते थे and they make you segregate it there and then by yourself. They will not take mixed waste in any condition because that has implications further down the line, and that is what is the job description of the social volunteer. So पहले प्यार से समझाओ, फिर नहीं तो there are escalation steps. तो वो उनसे ही करवाएगा. फिर अगले दिन वापस वो ऐसा देता है तो फिर that is reported and there is a major penalty which comes to them. So this penalty is not like 500 rupees or something. I told you, it goes up to lakhs.
But is it
goes
based?
Up to lakhs.
And how is it calculated?
So they at that I'm not sure, but they have a mechanism depending on the amount of waste that comes, and if there is a level of mixed thing in the waste, then with respect to the volume, they charge a rate,
Just a question here, because
and the rate is very high, so
Yeah,
it comes out to be
I'm
very
sure if
pinching.
you want to change behavior, you need to have a very strong disincentive.
Yeah.
But societies में हम लोग रहते हैं, and there are people who don't pay maintenance. And the society keeps on pursuing them for years together. हर annual meeting में ये defaulter.
Yeah.
अब यहाँ पर भी people से नहीं देंगे, even property tax नहीं देते.
हाँ, नहीं तो फिर ये लोग FIR करते हैं.
Okay.
Then they go with the police and they have an FIR. They go with the media. They have those kinds of.
I think media shaming is
mechanisms.
also
Would you
working.
say that there is 100% compliance in Indore now, or close to 100%?
Close to 100%. Close.
Obviously, close to 100%.
Yeah. Some bit of error is there, but there is. But they try to ensure that it happens the maximum, because their business model gets affected if there is
So-
some level of.
So I was always curious. I mean, Indore is now what, 6 times in a row?
Yeah.
6 times.
6 times a year.
Okay, but no other city seems to have come close to
Close
that.
to
Yes.
that. Yeah.
And that is also what kind of gets me. Ki if Indore could do it, and Indore was a very dirty city,
Yeah.
so why can't Ahmedabad do something like this?
Because we try to shy away from the fact that involving people is a very cumbersome exercise, and it will have its own repercussions and consequences. But actually, involving people has its own dividends.
And it's obvious because you could see how things got adapted. I mean, I was so fascinated by the story of the gas going to the BRT. I mean, everything got benefited, and people who were not even probably part of their imagination in year one are now getting
In that loop.
So we do have a couple of questions on that.
Yeah.
Take Shelja. Yeah.
People want to ask directly.
Shelja, do you want to ask a question after? Sorry, it's not audible. नहीं है.
As in volume of.
नहीं है.
Yeah. Yes, Shelja.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, similar story we all share. That we were looking for a small town in Indore, it is Punjab, and it was rated the third dirtiest city. It's a social survey, and we were working on solid waste management things, and a lot of with the time the bureaucracy change. Such instances have also been there in the like. How have you figured out? Means the way in Lahore people are working, were working when bureaucracy and politicians were hand-holding them, but now things are changing, and how they have kept it on.
A very nice question, Shelja. So the first municipal commissioner who started with this thing, so he was very passionate. Manish Singh, he was very passionate, and वो क्या करते थे कि वो कभी भी सिटी में निकल जाते थे, ठीक है, रात को 2 बजे भी उठ के सिटी में चले जाते थे देखने के लिए कि कैसे चल रहा है काम, जिनको रात को काम करना है वो कैसे कर रहे हैं. और उन्होंने मैंडेट निकाला था कि हर डिपार्टमेंट का हेड सिटी को विजिट करेगा, सबको एक पैच दे दिया था कि दे हैव टू गो एवरी मॉर्निंग एंड सी व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इन देयर पर्टिकुलर बेल्ट एंड come back, and then we will have a discussion. They had a WhatsApp group where they used to share pictures and stories about their own specific areas and all, and everybody, all top officers were supposed to go into the field, and this commissioner used to stand in the field, right, and people could actually see that the commissioner is standing. तो जो पहले आपको सिर्फ ऑफिस में पाए जाते थे, जिनसे मिलना बहुत मुश्किल था और बड़ा इंटिमिडेटिंग लगता था कि हम इन्हें कैसे मिले, और हमें पढ़ी नहीं है कि कौन हमारा कमिश्नर है, हम ठीक है अखबार में कभी पढ़ लिया तो पढ़ लिया. यहाँ पे वो बंदा आपके लिए सड़क पे खड़ा है, आप आइए, आप उनसे बात कीजिए. And employees also used to get motivated कि साहब आए.
So leadership, that is demonstrating leadership.
So
Actually.
he created such an aura around the executive leadership कि उनके बाद जितने भी कमिश्नर आए उनके कंधों पे तो बहुत बड़ा बर्डन था. They had to do much more than what he did. Otherwise there would be an immediate comparison कि यार वो ऐसा करके गए, उन्होंने कुछ किया ही नहीं. तो जितने भी उनके बाद आए उनके ऊपर बहुत बड़ी जिम्मेदारी थी. तो दे ऑल वर वेरी कॉशियस दैट दे कंटिन्यू विद द ट्रेडिशन, क्योंकि फिर वो तो हिस्टोरिकल हो जाएगा कि इनके टाइम पे इंदौर नंबर 2 हो गया.
But have they continued in that spirit?
Yes.
The other commissions?
Yes. Now they don't go that much in the field, but the initial 2 after Manish Singh, they were on the.
कहते हैं ना 60 दिन तक करो तो आदत हो जाती है, तो वो करवाना पड़ता है. 60 दिन तक करना.
So, but now Manish Singh is no longer commissioner.
Yeah.
So why don't we see what he did in Indore happening where he is now?
No, but it is because of the shared language should exist everywhere, and maybe there is some, because this is a very fatigued exercise. Maybe there might be some kind of level of fatigue also which comes into individuals, and it's a very tedious responsibility. मतलब आप सोचिए रात भर आप 2 बजे रात को जग के आप जाओ.
Do it forever.
Forever, you cannot be doing it forever. So there is some level of fatigue also that comes in an individual continuing with the same kind of
So the
exercise.
fear that I always have and which I have seen is to institutionalize something like this. And that becomes an issue because it is also individual driven. So in Ahmedabad you had a strong commissioner who could do some things, and then whatever he did went away with him. And then the new commissioner did not want to pursue, or he had his own interest.
Because Abhijit, whatever that commissioner did, he couldn't take it to the level of making it a pride for the city. Maybe out of 20 steps, he could have reached only up to 8 or 9, and then they are shunted off or whatever. So वो एक बहुत remarkable difference करके दिखाना, और एक everybody talks
reach
about
to
it.
that
If I give a
pride
specific-
level.
Specific example, it's an area that project that I worked on is the BRT. So the BRT got a lot of project awards. The first 3 or 4 years were really great, But then after that, nobody owned up. The corporation seemed to lose interest in it. So for me, I'm trying to relate these two. And where did Indore manage it well? That it is part of the city now. That Ahmedabad, nobody really likes the BRTs. Nobody really wants it in many cases. Probably people who ride it want it, but the city as a whole does not really welcome it.
Maybe I mean I'm not that much into transportation,
Yeah.
but what as an outsider, what I can see is that BRT tried to scale horizontally. It didn't scaled up vertically. जैसे इंदौर ने सिर्फ अपने आप को डोर टू डोर कलेक्शन में और वेस्ट सेग्रीगेशन में एफिशिएंट बनाते गए ऐसा नहीं किया. उन्होंने एक लेवल पे हॉरिजॉन्टली स्केल अप करके एफिशिएंसीज आ गई, उसके बाद वो ऊपर चढ़ते गए एट द सेम टाइम मेंटेनिंग इट, बट दे स्टार्टेड क्लाइंबिंग अप. So somewhere
Mixing
I
business
feel
models.
that
BRT could not do it.
BRT is still in the horizontal scaling up, but not going to the next level
So,
and next
I-
level.
that
when you
brings
talk
up-
about the vertical, what did you call it?
Innovations.
So I think innovation is
Innovations,
completely-
yes.
Business
I
models.
heard a lot of innovation in Indore.
Hmm.
Everything was innovative.
Yeah.
And one of the favorite things that I always like to say that the BRT stopped innovating after a certain time.
Yeah.
It became a segregated corridor. Okay, having said that, a lot of in your story, you kept on saying they, and I kept on wondering, yeah, they caught it. So could be Manish Singh, but
This is the commissioner, his entire team, and the smart city CEO.
so were they supported by the private sector as in consultants, or it was completely a public
No,
sector?
they were supported by NGOs, and they were supported by consultants also. So they had consultants who were advising them that let us look at this technology and let us evaluate this technology. And the best part was that those consultants were also not looking at their own very selfish motives. They were also thinking for the long-term benefit of the corporation and come out with mechanisms which are pro-corporation. So they supported big time. I mean, if the commissioner is on the field, the consultants are also on the field. ऐसा नहीं है कि साहब जा रहे हैं और हम नहीं जा रहे हैं. इनको पता ऐसा नहीं कि साहब इनको बोल के जाते हैं. इनको पता चलता है कि साहब फील्ड में है तो भाई अपन भी रेडी होके हम भी जाएंगे.
Is that with respect to the revenue model alone, or is it also innovation in the activities or the segregations that you spoke about? Was it also that, or just in how can you
See, what I felt is that there was a very strong pull by way of the Swachh Survekshan rankings. So, as a consultant, if I am working with them, my pull, of course, is some level to the description in my TOR. But if I am able to create a very remarkable difference here, it is a business for me. It gives me further business. I would be called to 10 other cities and asked to look at their things and how to streamline and how to do it better and all. And it was possible because of that national level ranking. You are not just contained to the city of Indore, but the whole of India is talking about it and looking at you. So that a larger frame of appreciation was
So you have one more question.
yeah.
So IOC is asking whether the condition of landfills have changed.
Oh,
than it was
absolutely.
before and now.
So the invite, no, that poster, that is the real picture of their landfill site. So that is how their landfill site looks just now. So they have variety of trees there. Fruit bearing trees nahi hai because of the quality of the soil. Fruit bearing trees nahi hai, but flower bearing trees hai. So you will see a bottle brush tree growing there, and some very nice flower bearing shrubs and plants are there, and big trees. And they have made a small cafe kind of thing also there. So cafe means you cannot go by and eat something, but you can sit there and enjoy with plastic recycled chairs and all of it, and all recycled materials are used in that place. So I mean, it has become a carbon sink for the city because the kind of green cover that the dump site has given is quite immense.
just as a follow-up on this, I had a question. It would have also affected the areas next to the landfill.
So the price, land value decreases, yes. The air pollution decreases because of that, and that is why they are going into. They are one of the cities selected by one of the international agencies for ambient air quality. So, this is a spillover effect. If you are able to turn around things in one segment, then the other funder or the agency feels that they have systems in place wherein other experiments can be successful. So, of the 3 cities in the world, Indore is one of those cities to look at ambient air quality and manage.
So if we look into the social sector of waste management, we have waste pickers who manage the waste and segregate and collect everything, right? So now that the system is already in place, do we see like decrease in number of waste pickers in the city, or increase in their health quality or something like that?
Yeah, so that is a very good question. I missed out on that. Waste pickers, what happened is that there is some level of dissonance and dissatisfaction amongst the waste pickers, क्योंकि waste picking का exercise ऐसा होता है कि बढ़ते जाते हैं लोग उसके अंदर, उस business में लोग बढ़ते जाते हैं. But यहाँ पे क्या हुआ? Because they got into a business model, they absorbed all the waste pickers in the wet waste business and in the dry waste business. तो dry waste में भी जितने भी लोग deployed हैं, those were all waste pickers. तो अभी वो लोग जैसे हमने तो बहुत impromptu visit किया था, so they were all wearing gears and everything and segregating the dry waste further. And they were all on a fixed pay mechanism. तो पहले उनका जो बहुत variable रहता था, आज कचरा मिला जाएंगे, फिर 3 दिन आए तो 4 दिन गायब हैं. तो ऐसा नहीं, उनकी लाइफ थोड़ी स्ट्रीमलाइन हो गई है, उनको फिक्स्ड सैलरीज मिलती है, एंड देयर माइट बी अदर बेनिफिट्स आल्सो व्हिच दे हैव बीन getting. But there is some level of dissonance amongst the new entrants into the business, because practically there is no waste to collect from the city. There is no valuable waste to be collected. So they find it as a dissonance in all of this exercise. The other very interesting thing that they did with the informal speakers was that they opened something called bridge schools and bridge classes for their kids. तो ये लोग इनके बच्चे तो स्कूल जाते नहीं थे, तो अब इनको स्कूल में भेजेंगे तो कोई 5th क्लास में जाएगा तो क्या ही कर लिया, क्योंकि उसने 1 to 4 तो किया नहीं था. ठीक है, तो what they did is that they created a concept with the help of one of the NGOs. They created a concept called bridge school. So all of these kids, they came and they studied here for 1 year, and depending upon the next class which they were supposed to go, they were trained and they were made to go through a syllabus which would help them meet the goals of the next class in which they would be going. So that kind of an innovative social mechanism also they have devised. Yes.
Going deeper into the advocacy and solid waste collection process, when we notice that the changing urbanization level, there's a lot of migration that is happening in the cities, and they don't get space in the city in the when there's the Swachh practice going on, and they are shifted to the southern side or the outskirts, and where there is government lands, there's no private lands, and there the city government stops coming because somehow that land is reserved in TP scheme, or somehow there's something going on reserved for the lake or something. So have we noticed similar case in Indore as well, where government lands are there, where a major chunk of informal settlements are staying, and solid waste collections process is not implemented, while the neighbor part of the land is might be private, and there it has been implemented.
So see, if it was within the periphery of the city jurisdiction, so they were taking care of it. So if it was a slum, they had a different collection mechanism for slum. So there the vehicles can't go, so they had a hand cart based system, and they had deployed their own karmacharis according to that. So if it is in the jurisdiction of the city, they will do it. But if it is outside the jurisdiction of the city, they will not do it. Now whether it is a government land or it is a private land, more so if it is a government land, then they themselves become the defaulters. So they were very careful about their jurisdiction, and whatever comes within that, they were trying to cover all of it.
Too many questions. So as the corporation limit grows, there is going to be a certain set of people that will then become a part of the corporation limits, who do not have the same values, do not share the same habits as the remaining people. I don't know whether that's happened in the last 6 years or not, but
It's likely.
yeah, it's very likely that it's going to happen very soon. So, do you have any thoughts on that?
So there is where the social volunteers come.
So that's why they are still
And they will be there
Have to
for
be
a long
engaged
time.
continuously.
So they will go and build those values how they have developed it.
It would never work as a one-time exercise. This has to be
This has
something
to
that
be-
is always over.
And this has given them very good results also, because the kind of trust that the citizens have on the city government, the brand that is created because of this trust has a bigger value now because of these social volunteers. That is why they are not doing away with them.
Are they also thinking of doing bonds? Corporation bonds?
I think they recently launched a green bond.
किया था.
वो तो हम लोग करते थे.
There's one
Indore
more
में क्या
question
था?
about the site. What is the role of this site? Is it only green cover, or is recycling still taking place there?
No, it's a green cover. Now there is no more waste dumped there now, because all the waste is getting processed. So the waste which cannot be processed, they have a sanitary landfill site at a different location. There they dump the waste which cannot be processed. But 95% of the waste is getting processed. But this place, which is a green cover, is a green cover. Now there is no waste.
I had a question about scaling it to different cities. So since there are so many different mechanisms about segregation and volunteers, is it a very
one very one statement which I very frequently use is that disincentives lead to incentives many of the times. So just now what is appearing as a disincentive in terms of fund, in terms of efforts and all, times will change wherein these incentives will get converted into incentives, and you will see that all of these efforts are really paying off. So all the cities, they have the same problem of waste, but there is too much of local context in waste. So what can be done is that taking what Indore did in all of these different segments of the entire value chain, take it up as a leading practice. Try, at least you have something in front of you. So when Indore was doing it, nothing was there in front of it, right? So but at least for you, you have something in front of yourself. Try to pick and adopt it according to your situations. You need not take and use it as it is, but depending upon your situation, you have something which is already available to refer to talk to people who have worked there, and then come up with your own set of plans. You had
So, what were the kind of activities which social volunteers for example, Nukkad Natak, or like one you said was like slogans and all of those things. So what
So
was
those
that?
are Nukkad Nataks, and going to the schools and talking about waste segregation and all. These are all very foundational level activities of IEC. But most important role of these social volunteers was to do one-to-one hand-holding. So जैसे if they are coming to your household, और फिर जैसे मैं रोज कचरा देने जाती हूँ, मैं उनको मिलती हूँ, हाय करती हूँ, बोलती हूँ भैया ये पानी का बहुत प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है, ये तो आता नहीं है टाइम पे, तो वो वॉलंटियर बोलेगा मैडम कंप्लेंट लगाते हैं ना, ये देखिए ये रहा ऐप में देखो मैं आपकी कंप्लेंट लॉगिन करता हूँ, and that is how they popularize their CCRS. And they ensure that whatever complaint comes through CCRS has the shortest turnaround time. अब तुम दूसरे तरीकों से कंप्लेंट करोगे तो वो इतनी जल्दी रिजॉल्व नहीं होगी. But if you will do it through the CCRS, अब who does it for them through the CCRS? It is the social volunteer. तो अब उसको मेरे को समझ में आ गया, अच्छा ये ऐसे भी कर सकते हैं, ठीक है बताइए इसको कैसे यूज़ करना है, तो फिर हम हमारे पास में रखेंगे, कभी हमें कुछ प्रॉब्लम हुई तो हम इसे यूज़ कर लेंगे, ऐसे इनका CCRS काम करना है.
Property tax में उन लोगों ने they had got it collected from the
Yes.
NGO workers.
Yes. So you have multiple advantages by having this, intermediary.
So I had a follow-up question to a question. So we see that over the 6-7 years that Indore has implemented this, we don't see other cities doing it as well. So where is the roadblock for the other cities? Let's say even for Ahmedabad, although it's a larger scale of a city, there is some. What are the roadblocks that you may know of?
उसकी हिंदी में कहें तो भी चाहत नहीं है करने की.
But other cities means know that.
अब कई शहरों को बिना कुछ किए अगर रैंकिंग
तो मिल जाती है ना,
तो थर्ड में करने की क्या जरूरत है?
we can get a ranking.
ODF plus.
I have a bigger question. See, this roadmap which they built, like picking up student and bridging their gap. This is like a small step of bigger plan, larger plan. So when they started initially pilot, do they have the full plan ready and they just plugged in wherever? How this
They
whole thing
generally
started?
some idea came up. They discuss it in the corporation and they say चलो करते हैं पायलट करते हैं. तो उनका वो जो पायलट है वो उनका पेट मैकेनिज्म हो गया. फिर पायलट करते हैं ना तो उनको पता चलता है कि इसमें कितना पोटेंशियल है, इसको हम सक्सेसफुल कर सकते हैं कि नहीं कर सकते हैं, इसकी क्या बैरियर्स हैं, हम उसको कैसे कन्वर्ट कर सकते हैं इनटू अपॉर्चुनिटीज और इनटू स्ट्रेंथ्स. वी हैव द रिसोर्सेज, वो सब उनका अंदर असेसमेंट चलता है. फिर नहीं होता तो ड्रॉप कर देते हैं, और अगर उनको लगता है पोटेंशियल है तो फिर उसके ऊपर लग जाते हैं.
I think this people's जो उनका motivation आ रहा है, उनका pride, people's participation and ownership and their कि हाँ pride है, उनको push कर रहा है officers.
अब तो ऐसा हो गया कि अगर ये नहीं आए नंबर 1 तो सरकार गिर जाएगी.
हाँ, so अभी वो they have to maintain that innovation model.
So one part of circular economy is managing the waste that is being generated, another part is reducing the waste. So do they focus enough? No, so do they focus on the kind of activities like or like awareness like using less of plastic or carry your own water bottle or use reusable things or
Yeah, they preach all of this, but since they have a business model in place,
Huh.
so
yeah.
The
So
business
that-
model depends on waste generation.
waste only. So अगर हमारा प्लास्टिक कम हो जाएगा, हमने उनको बोला है कि हम आपको हर रोज इतना टन ड्राई वेस्ट देंगे, ठीक है? अगर वो हमारा कम हो गया, रिड्यूस हो गया, तो वो सामने वाले के लिए डेट्रीमेंटल है उसके ऑब्जेक्टिव से, तो वो थोड़े टाइम बाद छोड़ने लगेगा. तो इसीलिए they preach about reducing waste, but actually I don't think that would be there in their scheme of operations.
So many of these practical things, like we everyday, that's like an everyday thing that we do. People who are coming, having meals in plastic. But when you throw it in a, you can throw it in a dry waste thing, but it has wet waste inside it because you are eating food. So do they go into that details of cleaning those things and then giving it, or is the machinery managing it?
No, they don't clean it anyway. It is a machine.
Machinery that
Like वहाँ पे एक eatery है, जैसे अपना नॉर्डन का है, ऐसे 56 भोग करके.
Chappan, yeah.
तो 56 भोग के वहाँ उन लोगों ने ना ऐसे ऐसे स्टूडेंट्स लोग स्टार्टअप लेके आते हैं कि हमें ना मोबाइल कंपोस्टिंग चालू करो, ठीक है? तो आप उनको 56 भोग जैसे 2-3 एरियाज दे दिए, ठीक है? तो ये लोग वहाँ से उनका वेट वेस्ट कलेक्ट करते हैं और वो उनकी एक वैन चलती है और उस वैन के अंदर वो लोग डालते हैं और वैन के अंदर कंपोस्टिंग. सो दैट इज हाउ, सो they are open to innovations. Everybody who comes up, anybody who comes up with a bright idea, they always allow them to experiment. And if it works out, then they try to institutionalize it. और नहीं होता है तो वो अपने आप ही fizzle off हो जाता है. But if you approach them with an idea, they never used to be against ideas or experimentations. They were always positive.
And I think the one thing that stuck with me from the visit was the design of the vehicle itself and how it had a center partition first and then they were like अच्छा कचरे को हाथ लगाना पड़ेगा and then they changed the design to front and back and then had that was like the amount of detail that they actually went that kind of shows what is the effort that's gone into
even previously what was the design, it was like a square box. तो उसमें ना कचरा ऐसे डालने में बहुत, because this is already heavy, you have to lift it and then you have to put it like this, so it was a painful exercise for them. तो उन्होंने क्या किया, उसको slant कर दिया ऐसे. तो आपकी हाइट के हिसाब से you can
Usually, yeah, we interacted with the women and then they said कि हमें बहुत तकलीफ होती है सूरत में या कहीं पे, से हम लिफ्ट
हिचका
कैसे
के-
करें,
हिचका के
इतना
डालना
ऊपर
पड़ता
कैसे दें जिनको इंडिविजुअली देना पड़ता है. So all these, मतलब so they are listening
things,
but listen and
They are
they
listening
actually
to people
react,
actually.
they also react to those problems and not just कि हाँ ठीक है बोल रहे हैं तो हाँ.
So responsiveness is a big factor in actually being innovative.
that will happen only when you have a pro people orientation. इधर करना है करके हो तो फिर ठीक है जैसे भी हो रहा है, but then these are smaller.
They basically used all the four legs: media, people, the administrative, and the political. And that's when it
NGOs,
NGOs.
NGOs are a key, I think.
people.
Yeah. So civic society. So probably if you sum it up, I think leadership and the partnership and the innovation.
And
it's
one
like
of the
they
things
are,
is that अभी है ना कई जगह तो ऐसा ओरिएंटेशन है कि हम टेक्नोलॉजी लगा दें तो GPS लगा दिया तो हमारा डोर टू डोर कनेक्शन फर्स्ट क्लास हो जाएगा, ठीक है? So they understood, और उस टाइम पे था भी नहीं इतना कुछ टेक्नोलॉजी का वो फैशन भी नहीं था इतना. So they understood that if your systems are in place and then you deploy a technology, it will make it more efficient. But if your systems are not in place and you deploy a technology also, it will make it chaotic. So many of the cities it is chaotic because
बेसिक्स नहीं है.
बेसिक्स नहीं है और फिर स्मार्ट सिटी में हमको फंड आ रहा है कुछ तो करना है तो चलो हमने ये भी डाल दिया हमने वो भी डाल दिया पर कहीं कन्वर्जेंसी नहीं हो रहा है.
Your story is about convergence, as you said, and
Yeah.
everything working towards one goal.
या सो उसके बाद उन लोगों ने उनके जो ट्रांसफर स्टेशंस थे सो वेरी वेरी नीट एंड क्लीन है बहुत नीट एंड क्लीन है. अब उन्होंने क्या किया उन ट्रांसफर स्टेशंस को ग्रीन ट्रांसफर स्टेशंस कर दिया. सब पे सोलर पैनल डाल दिया और वो सोलर एनर्जी से
कॉस्ट भी कम हो जाएगा.
So, ऐसे छोटा they keep doing here and there. So that is what
Climbing up the
climbing up the ladder is equally important, wherein your roots are spreading the roots.
So sustaining it through a machinery and partnership, and then climbing up. So that's continuously happening.
मैम, जैसे कि जब ये नया कमिश्नर आया और इसने ये चालू किया ये और पहला पायलट उसने जब से शुरू किया और जब वो पैन सिटी वो हुआ उसमें कितना ड्यूरेशन है फिलहाल?
So इन्होंने 6 months का पायलट किया था वार्ड्स में. पहले 2 वार्ड्स किए फिर धीरे धीरे स्केल अप करके 10 वार्ड्स किए. उसके बाद तो आफ्टर 6 months they went पैन सिटी.
तो जो आई थिंक जो पहला वाला आया होगा 2 वार्ड्स उसमें जो स्वच्छ ये आई थिंक सेंटर से जो पैसा आया
हाँ 2016 में चालू किया था.
लोकल पैन
हाँ.
एंड देन पैन सिटी स्मार्ट सिटी वाला वो पैन सिटी
स्मार्ट सिटी वाला तो उन्होंने जीपीएस इंस्टॉल करने के लिए ऐसे सब किया था और इनका आई थिंक लेगेसी बेस्ड वाला भी स्मार्ट सिटी के अंदर
Bio mining or
बायो माइनिंग और वो सारे क्योंकि वो बहुत वो उसमें कोई पीपीपी काम नहीं करेगा. वो तो कॉस्ट पैसा जेब से खर्च करते हैं. उसमें भी दे डिड इट वेरी इंटेलिजेंटली अनलाइक अदर सिटीज. उन्होंने जैसे अभी हमारे यहाँ कैसा हो रहा है कि हमने वो पूरा डंप जो है वो आई थिंक 23 कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स को डंप देते हैं कि मेरे सामने ये है और इसको आपको करना है और हर दिन का एक टारगेट देते हैं. अब सब ऊपर से चालू करते हैं ठीक है ना. सबने ऊपर से थोड़ा पर साइमल्टेनियसली क्या हो रहा है कि अपना फ्रेश वेस्ट भी वहीं डंप हो रहा है. तो
नीचे तक
इन लोगों ने क्या किया इन लोगों ने पैचेस बनाए. तो मैं हूँ तो मुझे बोला कि ये पैच है और ये आपको कंप्लीट करना है इतने टाइम में. तो जितने भी कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स उनके डिप्लॉयड थे उनको एरिया दे दिया डंप साइट में. तो सब ऊपर से चालू नहीं किया. सब ने हर तरफ से अटैक किया. वो जैसे चक्रव्यूह जैसा बना के करते हैं ना ऐसा किया अदर देन स्टार्टिंग एंड जंपिंग इट फ्रॉम द टॉप. सो इट वाज गेटिंग कवर्ड फ्रॉम ईच एरिया. सो एवरीबॉडी वाज डूइंग दैट. उसमें भी पायलट किया था.
How much time would they do?
They took 1 year.
1 year.
मतलब you can say they took 1.5 years because the 6 months were pilot. तो उस टाइम पे 2 ही को
It's
लगाया
very
था.
fast, efficient. I think.
And they understood कि ये तो वो पायलट में उनको गेम समझ में आ गया कि ऐसे नहीं चलेगा. फिर they invited many people and then they made patches. और फिर इनके आपस में कंपटीशन होने लग गए कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स के कि कौन कितना जल्दी करता है. और वो प्रॉपर जो साइंटिफिक मैकेनिज्म होता है बायोकल्चर यूज करके और सब करके वो किया उन्होंने. जैसे अपने यहाँ बायोकल्चर वगैरह नहीं यूज हो रहा है तो वो कल्चर वगैरह यूज करके उन्होंने प्रॉपर तरीके से किया थ्रू प्रॉपर मेथड.
Ma'am, you had mentioned that the mechanism which was initiated by the corporation, मतलब they did not outsource it to anybody. PPP या ऐसा कुछ नहीं किया था, and it was completely taken up by them. So now that the systems are in place and things are organized and it has now gone into autopilot mode, that everybody is able to manage all the waste by themselves. So is it going to be the future, like when there is a possibility that corporations might outsource this and then the contractors manage it on their own? Or the ownership still stays on the corporation? Is there any legal framework for that in place?
there is no legal framework. It's upon the method which the corporation wants to go forward. But there is a very strong inclination of going into the contractual. But I will be observing and I would be seeing it that if it goes to the contractual mode, how does it?
Because
Will it remain the same? Will it
yeah.
be better off? Will it become worse off?
scenario
I mean,
changes
that's all the
altogether.
time will say, but that would be a very interesting observations and further investigation.
Because major cities, when they start with these kind of practices, the first idea that comes up is that okay, we can do it in PPP model or we can subcontract it. But this is one idea where they have taken it upon the corporation itself to do it. So just wanted to know how long will that be sustained by the corporation?
Abhi to they are sustaining, but in the times to come, they are in conversation to contract it out. But as I told you that जैसे अभी legacy waste का कई सारे cities में चल रहा है, तो you don't get contractors also who have the proper kind of know-how, because these kinds of sectors are just coming up in our country. So तो corporation या छोटी cities की भी बात कर लो तो उनको खुद को भी नहीं पता है कि कैसे करते हैं और कितना रुपए लेगा. अगर मैं बायोकल्चर यूज़ करूँगा तो मुझे इतने रुपए पे तो पर टन इतना पैसा देना पड़ेगा. ठीक है, मैं बायोकल्चर यूज़ नहीं करूँ तो इतना देना पड़ेगा. बट देन आपका टाइम, ये नो हाउ नहीं है. So, और वो सामने वाले को भी नहीं है, जो कॉन्ट्रैक्टर है उसके पास भी नहीं है. तो वो क्या है कि ऐसे ही कुछ वेस्ट रिलेटेड उसमें थे, ऐसा कुछ आया, थोड़ा वैसे का जुगाड़ किया, मशीन खरीद ली और डिप्लॉय किया. फिर उनको लग रहा है कि अब ये बहुत सारी शहरों में डंप का चलने वाला है, तो अलग अलग सिटीज़ में जाके बात, तो उनको भी अभी धीरे धीरे वो भी अपना नो हाउ डेवलप कर रहे हैं.
Now they would be doing what they wanted.
हाँ.
Maybe the sort of challenges.
So like for example in Rajasthan, the per ton contract rate is 1200 rupees. हमारे यहाँ 300 रुपये. तो वो जो सेग्रीगेट कर रहा है राजस्थान में, तो वो 5 कैटेगरीज में लेगेसी वेस्ट को सेग्रीगेट कर रहा है. हमारे यहाँ सिर्फ हाँ, वो जो मिट्टी है, क्योंकि वो इतने पैसे मिलता ही नहीं है.
I had one last question, because we learned about all the good things about Indore system and the success stories. I'm sure in this journey there would have been some obstacles, failures, ऐसे भी कुछ हुए होंगे, right?
Because they, from the employees' point of view, that is the कर्मचारीज, it was a very long driven journey. इतना easy नहीं था to bring them on the field, because breaking them away from the corporation, they took a lot of efforts. So that was one of the things. And there were many failures also, because different wards never responded the way they wanted. तो कहीं कहीं पे काम करने में बहुत problem भी होता था. It took a longer time, more deployment of resources, and lot of patience and enforcement. So they had challenges, like fund was a big challenge, so they had to arrange it from here and there. And that is why it is also critiqued, the Indore model is also critiqued कि इन्होंने बहुत पैसा खर्च किया है, तब ये ऐसा कर पा रहे हैं. तो अब मिशन नहीं होगा तो ये क्या करेंगे? So everybody is also waiting for that. So they have leveraged lot of money from the mission to do this. So everybody is critiquing them that this is not a very cost-effective initiatives that they have taken up. It has a big cost-bearing exercise. So if the mission push is over, then ये क्या ही करेंगे? But my point is that with the mission push, you could have also done that. Why didn't you leverage it at least when the mission was available and that opportunity was existing?
How much do you spend per year?
For the social, I don't know for the whole of the thing how much they are spending. Just for the social volunteers, this is somewhere around 12 crores.
Just 12 crores.
Just 12 crores.
It's not a big amount.
Exactly, with a
So,
budget
but,
of like
and
so
in
much.
terms of the income that they have now,
Just 12
6
crores,
years
yeah.
down the line, how much income are they generating?
So see, every year they get from the wet waste, they get from the dry waste, the premium they get every year. Then they get subsidized fuel for CNG. then they get carbon credits,
Just
their
one
portfolio.
less
So this is the income that they are generating. But
The expenses are still higher.
And the city has to invest.
city has to do it.
This is
You
why-
cannot.
I mean, I find that a very, I use a strong, foolish argument to make कि इतना पैसा खर्च किया अभी देखो क्या होता है.
हाँ
तो आगे भी करो खर्चा.
हाँ.
It is something worth aspiring to be a
Exactly.
clean city. I mean, the quality of life is something that cannot be counted in terms of rupees, right?
Solid waste management is one of the mandatory functions that वैसा वो
More
नहीं
than-
उनको खर्च
and
करना
if
है.
you do a return on investment in economical terms, then this will come out to be much more than. ROI काफी ज्यादा आएगा इसमें.
मतलब उन्होंने वो उनकी रोड्स धोते हैं रोज रात को, जो मेन जो रोड्स होती है उनकी दे वॉश इट. सो उसने हमको साफ करा से हम तो ऐसे ही गए थे देखने के लिए, तो उसने वाइट हैंकरचीफ से करके दिखाया. तो डिवाइडर्स है, रोड्स है, दे वॉश इट एवरी नाइट. एंड अंदर वाली रोड्स नहीं इतना वॉश करते हैं, बट उसमें भी डिसीजंस लाइक द काइंड ऑफ मशीनरी यू शुड परचेज, the portfolio of machinery that should be there for. So क्या होता है कि अब ये नो हाउ नहीं होता तो हम एक ही टाइप की मशीन खरीद लेते हैं, एक ही कैपेसिटी की मशीन खरीद लेते हैं. छोटी रोड्स में वो कैपेसिटी की मशीन की ज़रूरत नहीं होती, उससे काम ही नहीं होता है. तो यू नीड अ वेरी डिफरेंट कैपेसिटी, उसका ब्रश टाइप अलग होना चाहिए. तो वो छोटी रोड्स के लिए, वो मेन रोड्स में ऐसा. तो ये सब धीरे धीरे करते करते दे आर नाउ experts.
Inventory उनकी standard elaborate हो गई.
So now, because this leading practice is there, other cities they need not think about this thing. This is already there. अब अपने को ये देखना है कि मेरी कितनी छोटी सड़कें हैं, मेरे को कॉन्ट्रैक्टर को क्या बोलने का है कि मुझे ये टाइप की मशीन, इतनी मशीनें चाहिए. At least I have that know-how now. Yeah.
Indore should patent some of it and then charge premiums on.
Revenue generation.
हमको इंदौर से नहीं सीखना है, हम जो कर रहे हैं हमारे हिसाब से हमको करने दो. This was when we were doing solid waste with them.
But great session, yeah, very interactive and useful learning we have got. And thanks you all for joining online as well as offline, coming to office. So, any last comments anybody had, especially the online people? We would love to know you, who you are, a quick, if you want to just give an intro.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, hi.
Really, it was really quite insightful, and we really came to know a lot, and we can do in a lot of our small cities. So basically, I'm a trained architect and an urban planner. I recently graduated from SBA Bhopal, and I've been working with small cities in Punjab and trying to intervene with them on various aspects of solid waste management and like nature-based solutions, working with them. So this is all, and really thankful for all of this. Thank you all.
Great. Anybody else? Yeah. I think that
Anybody
we can,
from this day?
yeah,
Quickly
we
introduce
need to
yourself.
have.
Yeah, myself Mahesh Mashetty. Actually, I'm working in INI Design Studio as a project manager over there for
Okay.
urban projects
Okay.
and beachfront projects and riverfront.
And who do you work with at INI?
Hydro.
I'm Shamila. I'm an architect urban designer. I was previously working in INN, right now I'm on a break. And I worked on urban projects in Mehsana as well as in Shiraj.
Okay.
I'm Vishek. I completed my bachelor's in urban design concept, and then soon after I joined Swachh Survekshan Trust as an impact analyst and GIS associate, and we are working as an integrated area development in Patwa area. So that attracted me here to
I hope it was useful.
Integrated
area development.
area development in Patwa.
Hi, I'm Maloney. I've done my architecture. I was a bachelor of Dhwani at University, and I have worked in the waste management sector with Paran Mitra, which We used to work for Ahmedabad Cantonment Board, which got the first number for Swachh
The UNDP.
UNDP. Yes, and currently I am working on developing a product which can segregate waste at source automatically. EI, what you're talking about, and incubated at IIM Bangalore for that.
Interesting. Okay, thank you all who have joined online. So we can formally close this informal session. And see you all. Yeah. This is. Thank you for coming. And this is our cup.
Thank you.
You can enjoy your. You can keep it on your desk.